Hey everybody, welcome back to some more Hearthstone card reveals. It's Neutral Part 2 Electric Boogaloo. I covered the ones that came out yesterday and the ones that came out this morning. And we've had two other sets of reveals this afternoon and evening. So without further ado, let's get down to business. Floppy Hydra, 3 mana 2/3, 2/3? I'm doing a disservice. 3 mana 2/4 beast, Death Rattle. Shuffle a copy of this into your deck with permanently doubled attack and health. We already have a card like this in Standard. It's Student of the Stars, right? So, Student of the Stars has been somewhat power crept already within a set, basically. So Student of the Stars is a 3 mana 4/3 Priest minion, which is a Death Rattle that you shuffle a copy into the deck. Instead of doubling though, it gains +3/+3 instead. When Floppy Hydra does its first double, it's effectively gaining 6 stats, obviously split up as 2/4 rather than 3/3. So I kind of see these as basically the same effect of the first Death Rattle, but obviously every subsequent Death Rattle is so much better. Now, Student of the Stars didn't really make a huge headway from release. However, it does see a lot of play in a lot of Priest decks, just in case you run into the Priest v Priest matchup or a Control v Control matchup. And this might be the deciding difference between you running out of value and having this infinite value, just infinite value card that will take you through the rest of the game. And that's kind of where I'm seeing Floppy Hydra right now. Potentially you slot into your deck for unlimited value. Now, obviously, there are a bunch of cards to tutor for the Floppy Hydra and improve it in general. After it dies one time, why not use the Druid spell this is rotating back into the core set? Oaken Summons. You get 6 armor, recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. Being a Druid, you're probably running bigger cards anyway. You can selectively pull this Floppy Hydra back, and on the second, proc, 3 mana 4/8. That's a really, really solid stat line. I think this is one of the big things about this and Student of the Stars. Neither of them have got particularly awful stat lines. Obviously, 3 mana for 6 stats isn't great, right? It's below average, but it's not giga terrible. It's not the absolute worst thing imaginable. Anyway, also Hunter, they can use Master's Call, and it's probably one of the classes I would watch out for a little bit on this, because Hunter typically has a history of Death Rattles and Beasts, so a Death Rattle Beast kind of is normally up Hunter's alley, so we'll have to watch out what comes out with the rest of the set. But we know they're getting Master's Call back in the core set. Discover a minion in your deck. If all 3 are beasts, you draw them all. So it's obvious, like, you put a Beast Hunter deck together, and then Floppy Hydra is drawn. In that, you get it back again very quickly. In the core set right now, we have Cattle Rustler as well. 5 mana 3/4, draw a beast, it costs 3 less. Conceivably, you could run only Floppy Hydra as your beast, run 2 Cattle Rustlers, and you would get 2 free pulls with Cattle Rustler. I think that's a little bit of a meme, but it is an option. Maybe it does go into this Master's Call Beast value deck. Again, we'll have to see what the rest of the set is. Now, there is some real meme potential here. And the reason there's a lot of meme potential is, obviously when we had this effect of a card permanently going back into your deck on a class card, because we also have it on Bottom Feeder for Druid, is that it wasn't accessible to certain classes. One class it wasn't accessible to was Death Knight, who has Death Growl, where you can spread Death Rattles to adjacent minions. And in theory, you can go infinite with Floppy Hydra, Death Growl, and Photograph of Fizzle, in the sense that you can always have those 3 cards at hand. If you drop down your Photograph of Fizzle with Death Growl, Floppy Hydra in your hand, you play your Hydra, you Death Growl, you copy the effect of Floppy Hydra onto Fizzle, you obviously get your Snapshot back into your deck that has the Death Growl and the Floppy Hydra in it, and then Photograph Fizzle, when it dies, gets the Floppy Hydra effect, will go back into the deck with the Death Rattle, and you will be able to draw Fizzle back. And obviously, once you've played the Photograph, you then get Death Growl, Floppy Hydra back, you get the Fizzle, you do the same thing again. Which basically means you could conceivably make a Death Knight deck that never runs out of cards, right? And that's a pretty big thing. We kind of had it with the Highlander Dragon Druid deck, where they would fizzle the super incredible hand 5 million multiple times with Reno, with Fae, and other big dragons like that in it. And eventually, big value equals victory, right? at some point you will outvalue your opponent. So if you can set up this slower control Death Knight deck, honestly, this might be a bit of a meme, but it could be a legitimate combo. Also, bearing in mind, you're always shuffling this Floppy Hydra back into your deck, which means you're always getting this giant card eventually. So, I'd be intrigued to see if anyone tries to do this. I assume it's going to be Triple Blood if you're going to do it. Who knows where Triple Blood will be by then. But yeah, this seems really, really obnoxious. Also, Yelling Yoda is something you could get from Death Knight. Also, it's in Hunter. And you can trigger the effect of Floppy Hydra 2 times to just start accumulating Hydras in your deck, so you're more likely to draw them. As a general rule of thumb, though, I think this card is going to be too slow for any of this. I think this is almost all meme potential. Other things to watch out for, if this ever became a big problem, you know, getting loads of Floppy Hydras in your deck, Flick is also rotating back into the core set, so expect to see a lot of Flicks in Rogues if this is the case. We also have Nostalgic Gnome. 4/4/4 miniaturize minion. Rush. After this minion deals exact lethal damage on your turn, draw a card. Okay, this is obviously a nod back to Gnome Private, which was a 1-mana 1/3 with Honorable Kill. That was the keyword, which, you know, is this big wordy text on this card. I appreciate why they're not putting Honorable Kill on it, but, you know, at this point, it would probably be easy just to put Honorable Kill. It's very wordy, the text on Nostalgic Gnome. But anyway, its effect was if it did this Honorable Kill, which is what it says on the miniaturized card, it gained 2 attack instead. So it could be treated as like a 1-mana 3/3. Now, you had to exactly lethal an opponent's minion, which means, you know, you had to do that final 1 damage. You had to have 1 health left. Or you had to buff this first, you know, like 3 attack, and then kill a 3 health minion, and you'd get the +2 attack on that. This was a really obnoxious 1-drop. It made your opponent really scared to play cards, because obviously you want to play 1 health minion into it, as you're going to have a big sad time. But also, any minion you did play, even if you played like a 2 health minion or a 3 health minion, your opponent could then like chip the minion down to 1, get the Gnome Private effect off, and suddenly, you know, you're looking at effectively what was a 1-mana 3/3. It was kind of hard to use. I enjoyed this card, so I don't mind it seeing some form of return. Now, the effect isn't quite the same on Nostalgic Gnome. It has instead got card draw in it, and it's fixed to 4 damage in a sense. And actually, this is really hard to evaluate the quality of this card. I was like looking through the databanks of Hearthstone, and there's actually only 1 card, I believe, that's ever had Rush and draw a card on the card text, and that's actually Claw Machine, which did see some play, but obviously the effects are pretty drastically different, as well as the stat lines and how you draw the card. And also, it's draw a minion, not a card, so it's a bit hand-wavy. I think this card won't see play. I think this will be a pack filler card. Now, I do appreciate, because it has the miniaturized text on it, you do get, once you play this, you get the 1-mana 1/1, which will have the same text on it. So in theory, you can rush in for 4 damage onto a 5 health minion, and then use your 1/1 to finish it off and get you the exact lethal. So it's effectively, you can, for 5 mana, kill a 5 health minion and get the draw 1 card. But when you're like doing that and you're looking at, you know, 5 mana 5/5 draw a card, you're rapidly approaching Azure Drake, which does that without any bells and whistles attached to it, and comes with spell damage +1. Now, I do appreciate the Nostalgic Gnome has this rush for 4 damage, so maybe this is good enough. Maybe it's just the right balance between control, value, and ease of use, because you can do a 4 health or a 5 health. But I'm not sure about it. I think Hearthstone has evolved since then, and yeah, I just don't see it. I think it's too much of a faff, right? A card I think will see some play in some form, but again, we're gonna have to see the full set. 20 mana 8/8 mech, Playhouse Giant. Costs 1 less for each card you've drawn this game. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Well, obviously the first class that comes to mind are Rogue. Any deck that was a Miracle deck, let's be frank. Now, a lot of the big Miracle Rogue enablers are rotating out. However, Gear Shift and 777s obviously are not. And that there is draw 10 cards, right? That's pretty good, drawing 10 cards. Also, it has the mech tag on it, and Rogue supports a mech archetype, so there is a little bit of a spookiness there about things. Also, you have Gaslight Gatekeeper if you're going to run some sort of hand, a big hand deck. I almost spoiled it already. I think Handlock will run this card actually in the end, but we'll just say it's Handlock. If you're running this big Handlock deck and you're intentionally trying to get to like 10 cards, you drop your Gaslight Gatekeeper on the board, you shuffle your remaining 9 cards in your hand into your deck, you draw 9 cards, that's 9 mana discount on this Playhouse Giant. And obviously if you draw into the other Gaslight Gatekeeper, Gaslight Gatekeeper and play that, that's 18 mana discount. That's really, really strong. So this could go into this Rogue archetype, but I think at that point you want more of a slower control, hand-based deck, and that doesn't really suit Rogue anymore. Also, just as a slight nod, I could have mentioned Druid on this as well, because we had Miracle Druid decks that are another class that can draw through the deck unbelievably quickly, but again, they kind of lack this controlling aspect that means if you just draw through your entire deck and get a payoff as an 8/8, that's actually not enough. You need more than that. If you're drawing through like your entire deck and you're getting multiple payoffs, then this is fine. But Demon Hunter also had this like draw mechanic which never really came to full fruition. Now, bits and pieces of it did get pulled out of it. But there's a Demon Hunter archetype for drawing many cards per turn with Mindbender, Momentum, which does see some play, and Argonite Golem. Maybe they needed this Playhouse Giant as well as that additional value tool. Perhaps this Gaslight Gatekeeper plus Playhouse Giant plus some of these other draw rewards will be enough to make this draw Demon Hunter deck work. Who knows? Where I think it will see play, and we're kind of getting a hint of this by the core set rotations, Mountain Giant is rotating back into Neutral Land, and Dark Alley Pact is rotating back into Warlock Land. And classically, I think I think this is going to be one of the things because of its 10-year anniversary, I think some of the class archetypes won't just be, something new. It'll be a nod back to their most, famous archetypes. So I already think that Warlock will get a hand Warlock archetype supported. And I think that is reflected by some of the core set changes. I think Hunter will have a face Beast Hunter deck. That was, the classic Hunter, and so on and so forth. Because of that theory, I think we will have Handlock, as I said, and Handlock would love something like Playhouse Giant. They already want to have giant hands because of the Mountain Giant. You fill your hand with cards. You can play your Mountain Giant as 0 mana 8/8s. You can play your Gaslight Gatekeeper, which I think would make that Handlock deck, especially if you ever got a card, and Warlock has had this in the past, where it's an effect that if you draw the card, the effect goes off. That would elevate this into a different tier. But I can just see you operating at this giant hand, playing 1 card a turn, dealing with whatever your opponent's got, and then eventually just start throwing down these giants at 0 mana. That's going to be really, really, really frightening. So watch this space on Playhouse Giant. We don't have all of the pieces of the puzzle there, but I think this is one of those cards that I just look at it, and I'm like, yeah, someone's going to break this card. Someone's going to be able to draw 20 cards very rapidly, so watch this space. Now, the cards that were released this evening, so these are very hot off the press. 3 mana 2/3 Nostalgic Initiate, another miniaturized card. The first time you cast a spell, gain +2/+2. This is obviously a nod back to Intrepid Initiate. One of my favorite cards from one of the most degen decks I ever played, which was Acrobat Demon Hunter. Intrepid Initiate was unbelievably strong. It had Spell Burst on it, which was the effect of the first time you cast a spell. Again, they're not reusing the keywords. But if you Intrepid Initiated, you coined and played another 1-drop, you'd get a 1 mana 3/2, and I've already said 1 mana 3/2. Holy shit, that is strong. Plus, you would get your other 1-drop minion, and that was backbreaking versus some decks. They just couldn't handle the aggro. Nostalgic Initiate is also built very similarly, but it fortunately comes up a bit later. So this is a 3 mana, not a 1 mana card. But if you just drop a coin on this bad boy, it's a 3 mana 4/5. That's really good. That's very good stat line. And you're still in this aggro range at 3 drops, so watch out for some sort of zoo deck coming in with Nostalgic Initiate. Also, you could conceivably play your Nostalgic Initiate on 4, play the mini that comes from it, which will be a 1 mana 1/1, and then you play the coin after that, and you get the 2/2 twice. You get more bang for your buck off the spell. Yeah, that will be really good if you're spending... And if assuming it's the... And you know what, let's not assume it's the coin. Let's just assume it's a 1-cost spell. Let's say you're spending around 5 mana-ish for... What would it be in total? 3, 4... It's 7, 8 in stats, right? For 5. That is very good. Very, very good. So, yeah, I honestly, I can see the scene playing an aggro deck, assuming aggro has a strong archetype. Okay, I think I said this like 18 million times. New favorite card just dropped. Forgotten Animatronic. 5 mana 4/6 mech. At the end of your turn, destroy a minion with less attack than this. It's Five Nights at Freddy's meets Hearthstone. Holy moly, it's such a... What a cool design. What a really, really cool design. I think the card base is actually fairly weak. It is potentially 5 mana, kill a guy, get a 4/6. 4/6 is under what I would deem is a good stat line for a 5-drop. You're probably looking for around 12 stats at the very least. But the effect itself is pretty powerful, right? Unfortunately, it's statted with its attack lower than its health. Obviously, if it was a 6/4, it would be kind of crazy. Where may this see play? Obviously, if you're putting Magnetic on this guy, you're going to get a lot of value for it, right? Because it's at the end of turn, it's not a battle cry. So you can buff this guy up so he destroys something bigger. The ones that I've thrown out here, if you do Absorb and Parasite, effectively the whole combo is a 7 mana 7/7 that is likely going to destroy a minion. Prosthetic Hand is the same thing, but it gives it Reborn, so it makes it even stickier. Also, with the Parasite, you get Rush, so you could conceivably attack a minion you don't want to destroy with its effect. So you hit something that has more attack, if you know what I mean. You can also put Spiderbot on it, or whatever it's called, SP3Y3DER, and put it in stealth, so your opponent can't interact with it for a while. That seems fun, right? You could also obviously just use some buffing cards. Pit Stop is one of them. You could discover this from your deck. You give it +2/+1, and hey, it's a 5 mana 6/7 that destroys a minion with less than 6 attack. That's pretty good, pretty efficient. You could also go through the bells and whistles game again. I don't want to keep putting this on every single card, but you could Death Growl it with a Floppy Hydra to make it shuffle back into the deck when it dies, and then it'll come back as an 8/12 instead. That is far, far too slow, but if you want to meme, that is a potential way to go about it. Alright, you're the new neutral. Giggling Toymaker, 4 mana 2/1. Death Rattle, summon 2 1/2 mechs with Taunt and Divine Shield. Obviously, this is Boomsday's Giggling Inventor. This was originally a 5 mana card. It's now 6 because it got nerfed. It was also a 2/1, but it was a battle cry, not a death rattle. So Giggling Toymaker is a 1 mana discount from the original completely broken Giggling Inventor. And I say completely broken. It was just a huge wall. You'd play Giggling Inventor as one of your late game decks, and the opponent would just cry because it was so awkward to deal with these taunted Divine Shield mechs. It was like the aggro killer. However, the big issue for this is Death Rattle. It's a slow response to it. It's not proactive like Giggling Inventor. So I actually think this isn't going to see any play. I think this will be just pack filler. There are Death Rattle lovers. Again, I don't want to do this every single time a Death Rattle card comes up, but you could use stuff like Ravenous Kraken to break it early. You could use Yelling Yodeler to trigger its effect twice for 8 mana, so you get... there is board space for this, right? Yeah, there's board space for this. You would get 4 1/2 mechs with Taunt Divine Shield. It's pretty efficient, but it's a pretty beanie board, right? You'd kind of want some other buff to it, but maybe some sort of token Hunter deck or token Death Knight deck maybe can make that work. I think it won't happen, though. Alright, the Origami family gets one probably final family member. The Origami Frog, 5 mana 1/4 beast, rush. Battlecry, swap attack with another minion. Just as a reminder, we've seen Origami Crane and Origami Dragon. Unfortunately, unlike its family, it's not making Vol'jin cry. I think this is the weaker of the 3. You would normally want something that gives you kill pressure. Sure, you can take attack on an opponent minion and then it has rush so you can kill it with itself. But in the process, your Origami Frog may perish. At a 5 mana card, you're probably looking at stealing For this to be decent, you're probably looking at trying to steal a 5 attack minion, but I think this is just too... This is only too niche compared to the Crane, the Dragon, which is more efficient at doing it, right? Card Grader. Now, this is a certain card. By the way, notice through all of this, and I think this is currently my opinion. You know what, I'll leave this to the end, but this neutral set seems very strong. Card Grader, 3 mana 2/4 Naga. Battlecry, if you've cast a spell while holding this, discover a card from your deck. Really, really strong. If you're a combo deck and you're looking for your combo pieces, and there have been some pretty strong combo decks out there, like Odin and Sif in the recent past/present, and we already know in the future that Headless Horseman is going to be out there, and the Wheel of Death is probably going to be in some sort of combo deck. You're going to want to draw these combo pieces as quickly as possible. And Card Grader, the effect to get you to discover a card from your deck is very easy. The requirement, just cast a spell while holding it. That's not too big a deal, right? Not 3 spells, just 1 spell. That's fine. And then you get to pick 3 out of 3 cards, the best one. Even just in general, this is actually a pretty solid card in a non-combo deck. It's 3 mana, like 6 statted minion. Draw a good card, or a better than average draw card, because you get to pick it. Yeah, I think this is pretty solid. For a common card, I can definitely see this seeing some play. Also important that it's a neutral card. Other classes have had access to tutors, obviously, but I've always found that Warrior kind of lacked the tutor for Odin. And this is kind of why the rifts were so strong, that one of the rifts was draw a minion, and that was as good a tutor as you could get. Card Grader maybe just slots into that deck, right? And you look for Odin that way. Sing Along Buddy, 2 mana 1/4 mech. Your hero power triggers twice. Tour Guide is rotating out, and this is your Tour Guide replacement, basically. Rather than making your next hero power cost 0, your hero power triggers twice while Sing Along Buddy's on the field. Now, it's a 1 mana addition to that, but it's a pretty well-statted 2 mana card, right? In total. It's a 1/4, so it's 5 stat lines. That's fairly solid for a 2-drop, with an upside as well. Also note for this card that Justicarth Trueheart is rotating into the core set, so you could potentially get a doubled hero power on an upgraded hero power, which is a lot of value. Do I think this is going to see any play? Currently, no. I think it has no chance. Tour Guide was pretty nice because it was a 1-drop. That was one of his big, lovely requirements. You could also save the button press for a future turn. You didn't have to instantly use it. Sing Along Buddy, obviously, you have to play it and then push the button on the turn. You might risk it trying to make it live through, a turn. You play the buddy on 2 to button on 3. That's probably too big a risk. At which point, 4 mana to double your hero power. The juice just simply isn't worth the squeeze anymore. The only deck I could see, and again, this is me, tinfoil hat predicting the future. I think there's going to be a big mech warrior archetype, just with, boom and stuff like that. And I could see a world where this being a mech slots into a control deck just so that you can get a double button push. Especially since you have other armor enablers in Warrior, for example, the Quillbore that gives you 2 additional armor. If you can imagine playing the Quillbore, the Sing Along Buddy, and then pushing the button, that's a lot of armor gain. Not even with Justicar, it's just a lot of armor gain, so I can see it slotting into some decks, but for the most part, some classes just simply won't want it, right? It's no good in Rogue, for example, so, yeah, okay, but probably going to be pack filler. Now, I kind of don't know if it will be pack filler, but I don't think it will be. 1 mana 1/2 pirate, Treasure Distributor. After you summon a pirate, give it 1 attack. We've seen this card before. It's Arms Dealer. It's the pirate version of Arms Dealer. Instead of undeads, it's pirates. So obviously this card lives and dies by the quality of pirates in the set. Now, there were more undead within the last rotation, in part because undead was one of the new tribes, so it got a lot of love, and they tried to spread as many undeads out as they could through one set, right? Historically, pirates haven't been as abundant in other classes, so to speak. There's been undeads for most classes. Pirates has almost only ever been a rogue and warrior thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they've really seen much play outside of those two classes. So that's where I kind of expect to see them. As a little nod again, Rogue has had Raiding Party added to its core set. And the only reason this would be added to the core set, I think, is if there's going to be a Pirate Rogue archetype. So I expect to see Treasure Distributor in some sort of aggro pirate deck. This is also a pretty classical Rogue deck, the Pirate aggro Rogue. This has happened before in the past. So we're going to have to watch out for the Rogue reveal, but don't be surprised to see a bunch of pirates. Rumble Enthusiast. And now I have to be honest with you, I've not played the Warcraft Rumble game ever. And this is, I think, a nod to that game. It's a 3-mana 2/5 minion. After you play the left or rightmost card in your hand, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. I'm sure this left or right thing has some sort of nod to the Rumble game mode again. Apologies, I have no idea. I don't play it, so I'm going to assume the flavor is great on this card. Delish. What concerns me a little bit about this card is it's very similar to the effect of Altruis, the Outcast from Demon Hunter. This card did see some nerfs. Now, I will say it's 1 damage to a random enemy. It's not to all enemies, which is why Altruis was so strong. But it is 1 mana cheaper, and it has 5 health, not 2. So this thing could stick on the board for a while. And it does look like a card that has been... I know it's a neutral, but it looks like it's hand-built for Demon Hunter. And we've just gone through a set, and even one of the cards got nerfed again. It's been twice nerfed in this rotation. Blind Eye Sharpshooter, which rewards you for playing cheap spells and cheap Naga from the right side of your hand because you're drawing them. So there is potentially a world where Rumble Enthusiast maybe sees some play in some sort of Naga Demon Hunter deck. I don't know, it's probably too much, right, to get the Rumble Enthusiast into the board, then the Blind Eye Sharpshooter. But hell, Blind Eye Sharpshooter, people struggle to remove it at 5, and now we have Rumble Enthusiast with 5 health. They don't learn, do they? So hell, maybe this is played on 3. You just hope it stays up, and if it does stay up, then you Sharpshooter on 4, and you just try and start getting your combo going as quickly as possible from then on. And then you're doing 2 damage to a random enemy, and you're doing 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, then 1. And it's always coming from the right side of your hand, right, for the Rumble Enthusiast, so you're always going to get the triggers. Just in general as well with the Outcast mechanic, which is for Demon Hunter, Rumble Enthusiast, even in just a general deck, will probably fit into that archetype pretty nicely. Do I think it will actually see play? No. I think it's too much fuss for Naga Demon Hunter. They just won't want to set this up. And I think the effect is too minor for like some sort of value controlling Demon Hunter deck. But again, we're just going to have to see we're going to have to see, because if any archetype comes out where it's like generates a bunch of 0-cost cards, and you can just throw them away from your right side of your hand all the way back to the center again, Rumble Enthusiast may see play in that type of archetype, that type of deck. So let's watch this space. Alright, and now this is the final card of the neutral reveals. 3 mana 3/2 Clearance Promoter. Death Rattle, reduce the cost of 2 spells in your hand by 1. Again, it's on a Death Rattle. This is something I've kind of noticed with this set so far. There seems to be a lot of Death Rattles which are... they're not quite as proactive, right? They're a slower effect. However, anytime a card is being printed which says reduce the cost of something, it almost always sees some sort of play, some sort of testing. Wayward Sage sees play in Demon Hunter decks, which reduces the left and right most card in your hand by 1. Obviously, that's because it's good for Naga. Demon Hunter, where you want to keep playing your... but not even your rightmost card, but you want to keep playing Naga, spell, Naga, spell, Naga, spell, that type of thing. So discounting cards is really good in that deck. Lifebinder's Gift did see some play in Druid and still see some play. Don't always grab the reduced cost of spells in hand by 1. Normally they try and get the duo effect right, where instead of choosing one, you get to choose both of them. And this card has been pretty strong, right? Siphon Mana from the past sword play is the Honorable Kill. Reduce all spells in hand by 1. And Clearance Promoter is reducing spells in your hand, not anything else. So they have a fairly similar scope. It doesn't always work out though. Shadowborn, for example, which is in the current standard, doesn't really see any play, which is discount your highest cost shadow spell by 3. But I think this is mainly because there's just no reward for doing that, right? I think clearance promoter, it's going to really depend, right? If there's a combo deck out there that needs the mana discount to play the full combo, then clearance promoter might be used to reduce the cost of these spells so you can make like a 12 or 13 mana combo go off. Otherwise, I think it's going to be just too slow. It requires you to have 2 spells in hand. You're not always going to have 2 spells in hand. And then when this goes into the field, if your opponent doesn't destroy it and they just leave it up on the board, you're like, oh, shoot, I kind of, I don't want to just trade my minion because it's a bad trade, for example. But I've got 2 spells in hand and I really want to cast one of my spells. But if I cast my spell, then I will get It's going to be that type of thing. I think it'll end up being pack filler. But it's still not a terrible card. So yeah, having gone through all the neutrals now, this neutral set, or at least I don't know if it's all the neutrals or like there's some neutrals coming out at the end, but at least for now, the neutrals that have been shown seem really strong. There's a couple of neutrals that I think in other sets I would have said look really, really strong or like, above average. And I'm saying it'll be pack filler in this set just because the overwhelming view on the other cards are, boy, these are strong. So, buckle up, boyos. I think this is going to be a strong set. That's all I'm going to say. Anyway, tomorrow I think are the first class reveals. I believe it's Warrior first. And I'm really intrigued to see what we're going to get for Warrior. I think we're going to see a lot of mech Warrior cards. The one thing I'm interested about is I think we might also see Pirate Warrior. Yeah, so that's my predictions for the set. Let's see if they come true. Anyway, see you tomorrow.